Nigeria's incumbent head of state, Goodluck Jonathan, faces off against a former military ruler, Muhammadu Buhari, in the next few hours. The president has warned against bloodshed or any form of violence. Investors, however, it seems aren't taking any chances. There's quite a bit of capital flight from Nigeria that has been taking place over the last couple of months. We'll be looking at that in a lot more detail in the next couple of minutes, right here on Global Business Africa. I'm Raman Yang in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Here's what else is in the pipe. Wholly owned black businesses in South Africa are set to get a shot in the arm. We'll tell you why. And Cameroonian potters who hold on to outdated art but manage to remain profitable. Now, Nigerians head to the polls in a matter of hours in a crucial election that threatens to see the Nigerian ruling party, People's Democratic Party, defeated for the first time since the end of military rule in 1999. In the final pitches to voters, President Goodluck Jonathan published a thank you message to Nigerians on the front page of many national newspapers, detailing several of his achievements, his campaigning for continuity, and his vow to complete the work he started in his first 4 years in office. Now, his most fierce competitor, the retired Major General Muhammadu Buhari, aged 72, of the All Progressive Congress, however, is pushing for an agenda of change. He has criticized several things: insecurity, broken infrastructure, growing inequality, and is also vowed to take action against Boko Haram and corruption in government, which he said had made Nigeria, and I'm quoting him here, a laughingstock of the world.
I want him to fulfill all his promises, to make sure that there will be empowerment for the youth, for women, and make sure that there will be development.
I want him to make things so the easy way for like poor people and some young boys like us, because many people now, some boys will finish school or young girls finish school, but they can't see better work to do. We are still suffering like this, so let Jonathan help us to at least have something to do.
I want Jonathan for the new mandate to create a link for foreign investors to come in so that our country will be that of America. And I want him to create a lot of job opportunities.
The Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan's election campaign has trumpeted his reform of the power sector as being his crowning achievement. But power shortages still persist, and the underperformance of the entire grid is a major political hot potato. President Jonathan took the step in 2013 of selling part of the moribund state electricity firm, privatizing it, and he says that process has produced results. He knows that power supply in many parts of the country has actually improved to a more consistent level, but still, you're only getting power for about 15 hours a day. That, however, is not the experience of most Nigerians, and the opposition is actually giving him very little credit for what he's done so far. Jitters ahead of the elections on Saturday, as well as a weak naira, have led foreign investors to sell off $667 million worth of Nigerian stocks for the first 2 months of the year. The electoral body last month delayed the polls by 6 weeks to the 28th of March, which is tomorrow, citing security concerns, and that sent financial markets into a tailspin. Now, the naira also crashed through a psychological level of 200 to the dollar for the very first time. It has recovered a bit, but it's hovering around that level since the middle of February. Foreign investors also increased the pace of outflows from Africa's largest economy as global oil prices fell. The main share index in Nigeria's Security Exchange rose 0.6% to 30,073 points on Thursday, but that did very, very little to erase losses on the bourse, which is down 13.8% so far this year. Now then, we're going to be talking to Beatrice Marshall. She's live in Abuja right now with just hours to go ahead of the elections tomorrow. Beatrice, give us a sense of the atmosphere in Abuja before the elections take place.
Well, Rama, as you know, this is the administrative capital of Nigeria, and of course not much political activity has been happening here. A lot of the political activity has actually been happening outside of Abuja in the rural areas, and for the last 1 week and today in particular, a lot of Nigerians in Abuja have been making that trip to their rural communities to cast their ballot. It is rather quiet here, a little bit of what you would call a nervous calm. Everybody is expecting this election to go without a hitch, particularly since the two contestants, the PDP's, who is the current president, Goodluck Jonathan, and his closest rival, who is the opposition's Muhammadu Buhari, particularly since they signed a peace deal yesterday, reaffirming that there will be no violence and actually telling their supporters that whichever way the ballot goes, there should be no violence, akin to what happened in 2011. So here, electoral officials are sort of saying that everything should go without a hitch, particularly since the government has assured the nation that some of the areas in the northeast that were facing a Boko Haram insurgency have been liberated, and that the final states in Borno State in particular are going to be liberated sometime soon, and that of course the people in the northeast feel that they are secure enough to go to tomorrow's ballot. So that is what is happening across the country, and particularly in quiet Abuja. Rama?
You've been in the country for a while now. Are we all set to go for tomorrow's elections, or are there poll or security-related logistics that are yet to be put in place?
Well, Rama, there is a huge presence of security personnel, but again, government officials and security officials and the government are assuring people that this is purely a precautionary measure. They are saying that in 2011 there were, youth members of political groups that took advantage of the election to cause violence. So they are saying the presence of the security personnel here is purely for precautionary measures. They are not expecting any violence. And today we went to the International Conference Center. That is the main tallying point where all the results will be collated. And we saw the preparations going on there, and all around that area had been cordoned off because that will be the major tallying center for this election. But there is not much to worry about in terms of the election itself, because in terms of the internally displaced persons, there are provisions that have been made for them outside of the northeast and across the country. We are told that the structures that were put in place in 2011 are still the same structures that have been put in place, and electoral officials are saying that as opposed to 2011, where they expected the result within 48 hours, they are actually expecting this result within 12 to 36 hours. So we are expecting the result to be out by Monday. Rama?
Indeed. One final question for you, Beatrice. The Naira, it's fallen quite a bit since November last year, and we're seeing some dollarization taking place in the country. Now, that did prompt the central bank to issue a warning that the use of the US dollar for local transactions was illegal. What's the reaction been to that warning?
Well, there hasn't been much reaction here, Rama, but of course observers are saying that the dollarization of the economy is rather low and that it may really not affect the Naira as such. Well, the banks were closed today, but on the parallel market, the Naira was trading at 200 to 220 there. It is rather high there for the Naira, but the central bank governor has said that the Naira remains the official currency of Nigeria, of the Nigerian economy, and that of course the central bank is not a law enforcement agency, so there is not much that they can do. But they have issued a warning to particularly landlords and to schools that have been charging their rents and their school fees in the dollar. But of course they have made it clear that since they're not a law enforcement agency, there is nothing much they can do. However, observers are saying that since the dollarization of the economy is still quite low, there is not much of a concern at the moment. But of course, Ram, I have to bring you up to speed with what is happening here. Up north, we are receiving reports up north and in Lagos as well that people are stocking up in preparation for tomorrow's election, purely as a precautionary measure, because they are saying that, well, they do not know what Sunday will prevail there, whether peace will prevail on Sunday. So there is a lot of stocking up of commodities here, particularly in the northeast, and particularly since the borders, the sea and the land route here have been closed off. Rama?
Indeed, and that has a ripple effect on logistics across the board. We'll leave it there for the time being. That's Beatrice Marshall live in Abuja, part, of course, of the team who have deployed in Africa's largest economy to bring you up to speed with what will happen from tomorrow. Robert Nagila is up in Kano, and of course, Deji Badmus is keeping tabs on developments in Lagos. Still in Nigeria, Miriam Bemard had a conversation with Charles Robertson, who's the chief economist at Renaissance Capital, about Nigeria's political and economic outlook after the elections. We had part of that conversation on Thursday. Here's the second part.
And S&P Ratings Agency just downgraded Nigeria last week, 1 level to B+, 4 levels below investment grade. Was this expected, do you think?
I hadn't published on it. I'd sent an email to internally saying that this was very likely, because a month ago they downgraded a whole host of oil producers in Eastern Europe, in Africa. So a one-notch downgrade wasn't a surprise. What was interesting, I think, is that they still have a B+ rating, which is, say, 3 notches above Pakistan. And Pakistan's quite in vogue at the moment with equity investors because it's an oil importer, not an oil exporter. Why is Nigeria's rating so high? Is part of the question, and that's because external debt is actually extremely low. This government did not go on a borrowing binge in the last few years when oil prices were high and people were ready to throw money at anybody trying to issue debt. This government in Nigeria didn't borrow in a big way, so that's been very helpful for keeping this rating at actually quite a decent level for a country with this level of income.
So now, looking at the lower oil prices, is this something that Nigeria can come away from now that it has to move away perhaps from oil exports?
It's going to have to rebalance the budget to try and broaden its tax base without being so dependent on the oil sector to provide the revenues. And that's tough. So there's been talk about raising VAT rate from 5% to 10%, possibly removing the fuel subsidy. There's lots of items like that being discussed by investors at the moment.
But there's not a specific reform plan that would perhaps fill the gap of that revenue shortfall that we're now not seeing from oil?
There's probably going to have to be spending cuts. And infrastructure, sadly, is often the easiest cut to make. And yet we know that Nigeria needs infrastructure. So perhaps there's then room for the private sector to be doing more on infrastructure, even as the government has to step back at a time when its oil revenues are down.
Charles, thank you very much for joining us.
Roughly 1,000 workers at the construction site of South Africa's Eskom's Medupi power plant have been fired. Why? For vandalizing property, apparently, during this week's strike. Some 21,000 contract workers went on a one-day strike earlier this week on Wednesday. They are grieved by poor living conditions and they want higher pay. Murray and Roberts and Actom, a unit of France's Alstom SA, are some of the companies that are building this massive coal-fired power plant. No one was immediately available to comment, however, from both companies. The National Union of Metalworkers of South Africa said it would fight these dismissals. It has threatened to carry out more strikes at the plant. Labour disruption and technical faults have increased costs at the long-delayed Medupi coal plant, which was expected to start generating power by July. When South Africa's broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Code of Good Practice come into effect in May, the major focus will be on ownership structures. Now, that essentially means that wholly owned black businesses will be in a far better position to compete, as Angelo Coppola reports from the just concluded Black Industrialists in Durban.
There's one industry sector that will be shaken to its roots when the codes are implemented. The construction sector continues to feel the effects of a Competition Commission ruling on their anti-competitive behaviour over the last 2 years. The collusive behaviour has also kept out black players.
If you look at the value chain in the construction industry, very, very limited, if not almost none, existence of blacks in the value chain. So I think one of the aims of the DTI and the government in implementing was to see black faces and participation in the value chain.
The objectives of the code are laudable, but the devil is in the detail.
I think the new codes are creating a huge amount of confusion as people are trying to work them out right now. There is a lot of new parts to the codes that need to be understood and what the implications are and how small business needs to apply themselves to be compliant with those elements.
I think a lot of people have a misconception. They think that come May the 2nd, there's going to be a big revolution, things are going to change overnight. It's going to take time.
Part of that process will include understanding how the code will work in reality.
Many of the components are still impractical right now, and people are trying to work out how to practicalize the codes in various industries where the codes may say something, but we haven't worked out as small business how to actually apply that piece of the code.
It's going to have its challenges, of course, because transforming what has been the status quo for hundreds of years isn't something that will definitely not be changed by one a piece of legislature.
There are certain industries right now where it's practically impossible to comply without breaking some other law by doing it.
The legal overlaps still have to be ironed out and addressed, but many black entrepreneurs can see the opportunities.
Because now there's these codes that are getting implemented, it's forcing us as a small, medium black entrepreneurs to be creative and say, listen, yeah, I need to play a role. I need to be one of the black industrialists that they talk about.
There's no doubt that there will be some teething problems when the new black empowerment codes come into life. There's also no doubt that entrepreneurs of any color will find a niche and develop businesses. Some will fail, some will succeed, but everyone will have an opportunity to give it their best shot. For CCTV in Johannesburg, I'm Angelo Coppola.
Right, quick run through the markets here for you. The usual spread of numbers across the board. The Nigerian All-Share Index closing in positive territory today, but in the longer term, however, not exactly in positive territory at all. Down 10.7% in the year to date over the last year, so it's actually down by about 16 or so percentage points. Coming up next, we'll explain why COMESA saw it fit to give Kenya another year to protect its ailing sugar industry. And we'll tell you what's hot and what isn't from Egypt's Formula One car show.
Sustainable development and a commitment to developing partnerships with Africa. Some of the key phrases already used at the Africa Global Business Forum here in Dubai.
There is a need for a predictable environment in which investors have to put their money.
Welcome back to the program. Now let's start with a story in this segment that essentially came out in the last hour. So the United Kingdom has revised and upgraded its travel advisory against Kenya. Just hours ago, the Foreign Commonwealth Office revised its position to advise against all but essential travel within 15 kilometers of the Kenyan coastline. Now, the area of concern includes Mombasa Island, the Moi International Airport, Malindi, Kilifi and Watamu. These travel advisories are widely regarded by tourism sector players as one of the key reasons for decline in tourist revenue and traffic. In the year to November 2014, the volume of incoming traffic was down by 17.9% to just over 799,000 arrivals compared to over 970,000 in the same period in 2013. That's a story we'll be keeping a very close eye on moving forward. Still in Kenya, though, the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa Trade Ministers Council has allowed Kenya a one-year extension on sugar safeguards from member states, despite making virtually no reform whatsoever. This essentially limits the amount of sugar that Kenya can import from the region, essentially protecting its struggling, inefficient, anemic sugar industry from cheaper imports. The extension is subject to review, however, and renewal for another year. Terms and conditions currently in place and agreed to way back in 2007 will still apply. Those include privatizing state-owned mills, which hasn't happened, research into early maturing and high sucrose content sugar varieties and adopting them, which also hasn't happened in several factories, as well as paying farmers on the basis of sucrose content instead on the sheer weight of cane delivered. Now then, let's move on to Cairo. The Automec show took place in the Egyptian capital this week. There are about 45 companies taking part in that event. They were there to market and advertise their brands and offerings for 2015. Yasser Hakim went on to sample what was on display. He reports on how the country's car industry has survived Egypt's political instability since 2011.
The exhibits welcome you from outside the main hall at the entrance, where you are met with the trucks, vans and special edition cars. For the first time in Automec, there were companies that offer defense systems for cars.
It's the first time we introduced locally produced defense system in cars for the presidency and cabinet. We provide security system for individuals too. There are anti-bullet wheels, windows and car bodies. It offers full protection for the family. The family will not need to engage with the attackers at all. They are totally protected inside the car.
Only politicians so far have shown interest in this defense system. Other than the trucks and the unique type of cars, the normal brands that are in the market are placed inside the hall, and they are the same as every year. Not much has been added this year. 45 companies are showcasing their latest brands to those attending the exhibition. The Chinese companies had a strong presence, whether in the spare parts section or the vehicles.
This year, we have locally assembled vans, minibuses and cars. We expect a 10% raise in sales this year as our quality has improved over the previous years and our prices are very competitive.
Car sales have exceeded 292,000 in 2014. That's a staggering 46% more than 2013. Much of it is owed to the multiple facilities given by banks and companies for car loans.
We work with the client from step one to the end to make sure he can finalize all procedures to buy a car by credit. He can do everything from his home. Procedures now are much easier than before for a car loan.
The market has been slowly recovering from the 2011 unrest. However, the government's latest cap on dollar deposits and withdrawals has got some in the industry worried.
We are unable to fund our imports or set prices for our vehicles because of the value fluctuation and scarcity of the dollar. It's affecting our sales.
Though sales have not yet reached the pre-2011 levels, most experts believe the future is bright.
The tough period is nearly over. There are a lot of foreign investments in the coming year, which will push the industry forward. I am optimistic.
Yasser Hakim, CCTV, Cairo.
You remember how in the first quarter of the year we were all giddy with excitement because fuel prices are heading down? Not anymore. Fuel prices, as far as crude is concerned, of course, there will be a bit of a lag effect here. Brent crude down about 2 percentage points or so in trading today. However, look at this from South Africa. Retail prices for 95 grade petrol will go up by 14% a litre from the 1st of April. And you can see that ripple effect coming right across the board from other African countries as well. There will be a bit of a lag, but it will happen nonetheless. This is an example of old is gold. Two potters in Cameroon are holding on to an outdated trade, but they're profitable.
Tell the African story differently. You know, Africa is known from the conflict, hunger, starvation, whatnot, the bad things. Yes, there's that going on, but we also want to project Africa in another light. We want to bring out the positives. If it's in a conflict, if it's in an election, we're able to give a level playing ground. Well, I'm a field reporter or correspondent, if you like. From a young age, I always wanted to know what's happening in the news. I wanted to read newspapers. I was actually reading for my folks the newspapers. I've covered general elections. I've covered conflicts in the entire African continent. I was thrown into the deep end when I got an assignment to go into Somalia. That was quite the experience. I think that was my first conflict zone to cover here at CCTV. Going to Somalia opened up to me the world of war correspondency, and since then I've been able to go to several other places like the Central African Republic. I've been there 3 times. The conflict there is different from what we've had in the past, and we've had experiences where we've been attacked. You have to realize whether you're cut out for this and you want to go ahead with all this. So I can say it's a career that is not for the faint-hearted so far. As soon as I'm given a story to do, that passion, it ignites something in me, and I get excited when I see my package or my production on air, and then I know that I'm actually doing maybe what I was called to do at some point. The only way you can actually highlight some of these issues is through doing what we do. So certainly it's worth the risk, but then again I keep saying no story is worth my life. I'm Jane Keo. I'm a reporter for CCTV Africa.
Welcome back. Pottery has a very long history in Africa. It's one of the oldest arts in any community you can pick right across the continent. Now, compared to the 1970s, the business has been on the back burner, shall we say, in Cameroon, mainly due to low profits fetched from the local and the regional market. But two highly committed potters in the northwestern end of the country are adapting their methods to meet changing demand and still make a profit.
Meet Paul Foba, one of the potters in Bamiseng village, northwest Cameroon. Foba spends most of the day spinning clay. He has been doing the job for 15 years and has created a variety of products in the process.
I've been doing this pottery for 15 years today. Then on these potters we produce only round shapes. Then I produce varieties of all type of product that I could do with clay, even statues.
Pottery is one of the oldest arts practiced in Africa, with functional and sculptural pottery dominating Cameroon. But with the country's deteriorating financial situation, the market has changed and Paul has had to adjust to making products that attract demand.
We have financial problems. So I base on this now because there's a little bit of there's market. We have Cameroon market with this charcoal pot. That's why I do based on the charcoal pot for the moment. So we have difficulties in selling other products in Cameroon here.
Despite his passion for creating a wide range of products, he has been forced to focus on making certain items that are guaranteed to sell.
I like this work. I'm trying to help my own family through the pottery work. I see that it's a good business. Just that there are difficulties like to market the product. We still have difficulties in some of our products, like statues and other things. In Cameroon, the market is very slow. So we now manage on other products like this charcoal pot. Cameroonian, we normally use the charcoal pot.
Foba's business partner, Bode Dennis, has ventured into brick making. His bricks are in high demand for construction of houses, baking ovens and hospital incinerators.
Yes, we're supposed to do like that. We're supposed to produce and keep, but due to financial problems, we cannot do that. The only way the customer to come and place their order, they will take a little advance before we can continue the journey.
Over the past 5 years, its economic freedom score of 51.9 is 0.7 lower than last year and lower than the regional average. Norma Kugu, CCTV.
The British airline EasyJet has enforced a new policy for 2 crew members to be in the cockpit at all times in the wake of the French Alps crash. Similar decisions have been taken by Canada's Air Transat, Norwegian Air Shuttle and Iceland Air, but EasyJet is by far the largest airline to take such action. The low-cost carrier transported nearly 65 million people around Europe over the last fiscal year. It has 8,000 employees and a fleet of 200 Airbus planes. EasyJet's budget rival Ryanair, which is based in Ireland, already has the exact same cockpit policy. Quick run through currencies here for you. Not much to talk about with respect to the Naira. That's been stable around 199 to the dollar. The Kenyan shilling, of course, overvalued but relatively stable. Demand and supply for the US dollar, of course, balancing out in trading this week. But that's it for this edition of the program. Do send your feedback to Global Business Africa at cctv.com. Facebook and Twitter is also where you'll find all the latest updates on the stories we cover right here, including, of course, the elections in Nigeria. We'll see you right here on Monday. I'm Ramanyan.